Welcome back. The time is 10:31 on this third day of December. It's a Wednesday. It's kind of nice to have the first day of the month fall on a Monday, so I never get confused on what day of the week it is.
That is nice to have.
Dr. Pamela Denise Long joins us now, Republican candidate for Senate in the upcoming 2026 midterms. Primary season is here.
It is upon us, yes. I launched my campaign in May, and it has been a whirlwind. I have put 40,000 miles on my car since that time, traveling all across the state from the border of Wisconsin down to the, Ohio River and all points in between. It's been enlightening.
I bet. And, that's so, in ways, I think refreshing for voters to hear about, too, is just the mileage and all the groundwork because, sometimes, and especially right now, it seems like there's a little bit of an animosity with some of the national Republican figures, not, federally, but throughout our state that, maybe don't put in that extra work because they think, hey, I have a safe district. And, getting the miles on the car and meeting voters where they're at, that's the way to do it.
Yeah, I think most people want to vote for someone they know. We have 102 counties in Illinois. I mean, I talk to people about being downstate and they think that I'm, at the bottom of the state. And I'm like, no, there's a 2.5 to 3 hours more of Illinois. So I get it. But people need to see you. People need to really understand what you're about. And I think people have really appreciated the work that I've put in, the sweat that I've put in over the summer and parades and all that. So,
well, and take me through that journey a little bit and what leads up to that decision, because, it's one thing, and I'm not degrading any office because we all need to run for public office or we all need folks to do it. It's, it's different to run for, an alderman position and then to run for United States Senate for a long time, stronghold, Democratic seat.
Yeah.
What was the thought that goes into that?
Yeah. So this is the question people ask. Why are you doing this to yourself? It's a task.
Yeah.
I tell people repeatedly that folks have asked me to run over the years. I've toyed with it because I can see the issues. I've been actively involved politically as a voter. I could not wait to vote. I think I skipped to my polling place when I could finally vote at 18. And I've appreciated through my college years the importance at Mizzou, the importance of actually engaging with elected officials. I was very fortunate. My occupational therapy program, which is my first career, would take us to the Capitol to advocate for health-related interests and also professional regulation for our field, which the state didn't have at the time. So I've always kind of appreciated the importance of having sound governance and speaking up with your voice. So, I wrote for a column for Newsweek for like 3 or 4 years, writing about the issues, writing about solutions, because I'm a solution-oriented person as an interventionist. And I've had the fortune of being able to consult with some really powerful folks. I had an opportunity to consult with the Trump campaign and advise them on how to address the immigration crisis and the folks being ignored in Chicago. That was back in 2023. And I think what happened, CJ, is that life presented an opportunity to actually be the change instead of asking other people to do it and depending on their courage, their will to get things done.
Well, I think it's such an interesting perspective, too, where you're coming from with being, a weekly, you're writing a column for Newsweek, and you get to see on a different level the issues in which the everyday American feels in some way, shape, or form. And maybe they don't always agree on the solution, but the issue still is there.
Yeah.
And so when you're writing about these things and you start to put this campaign together, how quickly did that platform formulate? Was it one that just made sense right away and it's time to go?
Yeah. And so the interesting part about my column is that I originally just started writing on LinkedIn. Writing in the darkness. No one on LinkedIn engages with controversial material. No. Most people don't because they're trying to find a job. So they don't want the footprint. And so, whereas I'm like, this needs to be said. Someone needs to pick this up and do something about it. And then I got tapped through relationships and whatnot to write, a debate piece at Newsweek. And it just blossomed from there because they liked my perspective. And so, yes, much of what I'm running on is issues that I've been talking about. And interestingly, so I had a Twitter account. I had like 200 followers. I have no idea who those people really were. And then folks started sharing my Newsweek columns and I got back on and then I started talking about my political beliefs. And now I have 12.5, 12.5 25,000 or something like that followers, not a large following, but I also engage in Twitter spaces. So I invite people to come in and have difficult conversations. People from around the world have joined my spaces, up to 30,000 people at one point. And so I'm also informed by these years of hearing these diverse perspectives from people around the country and also folks in Illinois.
One, I think that's such a good parallel to Illinois and just the way the state breaks down in terms of your constituents, because, the more southern you go, you're going to see the red counties pop up, but you still have the folks that feel like they're neglected from, Chicago.
Absolutely.
And there's a lot of that.
Yes.
But, in your position, if you come out ahead in March and then in November, things look good and you flip this seat, you still have to, represent everybody. And I think it's important to have, a space to where it's okay to have folks in a conversation that disagree with you. It doesn't mean we hate each other, And now, have you had those conversations up and down the road so far?
Oh my goodness, absolutely. And what I'm finding is that most people want solutions. Sure, there are people who are fed up or they buy into the social media rhetoric where you're pointing fingers at each other. That kind of stuff is going to happen. But the majority of people are simply looking for solutions. They're tired of the performance. They're tired of the Twitter sort of social media sort of beef, and they want people to actually put Americans first, and that's what I've been all about these years.
Well, and before we go into some of your policy priorities and we talk about that, take me through what it's like to just advise, on a national level a little bit, because I think that's a fascinating kind of lead in as we talk about some of your policy standpoints, because this was a heavy issue in Chicago where residents were quite frankly fed up.
Yeah. So I did a lot of behind the scenes work in terms of consulting with organizations in DC and developing other stakeholders to get involved with it. I did a lot of case making at my Newsweek column as well. I met some really great friends who were well connected, which is how I had the opportunity to talk with Laura Trump and some folks in the Trump sort of circle. What's it like? It's funny because I've never been particularly starstruck. And so for me, it was really just having a conversation. Yeah. It was really bringing an analytical lens to what the campaign needed in order to actually bring more people who are generally conservative over to this sort of Americans first, secure our borders, hire Americans, start investing in our own people sort of conversation. So it has been great to see some of my work and words and people grow and develop and just sort of take off. So
absolutely. And, that leads into right now, some of these policy priorities that, tie right in is right now, it seems like there was for a couple of weeks anyway a pretty public war of words between the president and the governor, and in your position you're a federal figure, you're a United States senator, but what do you see in that if this seat flips? Governor Pritzker is still going to be Governor Pritzker.
Right.
He's not up for election, or he still will be Governor Pritzker. But my point is, how are you going to have that conversation with the governor now that you have your input into some of, Trump's immigration policies? What do you make of it to begin with? Is it even beneficial?
Well, Donald Trump's going to be Donald Trump too, right? So, and there's no one like him, right? And so, my plan is to make sure as a federal representative in the Senate, there are only 2 senators per state and 100 of us, right? Is to make sure that I'm working with whoever is governor, whether a Republican candidate is successful at their bid or if it's Governor Pritzker. Ultimately, what I want is for the people of Illinois to thrive and for Americans to be put first. And I'm pretty sure that there are areas of commonality between myself and the governor, although immigration and his approach to it is definitely not one of them.
Absolutely. And for the folks at home that are going, CJ, don't forget about the governor's race. I'm just looking at the polls, and we'll see. You just never know. Now, going into this, though, on top of this, what are your most important policies or most important topics that you want to address and you want to tackle today that you think the public needs to know about as they head into March?
Yeah. So the healthcare issue is one that's ongoing, right? Yeah. So we have till the end of this month, essentially, to make some decisions about that. It's not going to go away, meaning that during my tenure, mayor and or shortly during a second term, if I have one, it will come up again. In addition to the adult healthcare issue, we have the Children's Health Insurance Program, which is going to be up for reauthorization in 2027. So right after I am sworn in, and that needs to be addressed. So I want to make sure that we're making healthcare affordable. I love the idea of health savings accounts because they're, first of all, inheritable. You can use them for whatever you want once you get to be at retirement age. The medical savings accounts for older adults, the same. I like increasing choice in healthcare and not decreasing it. There are ways that Illinois has outlawed, for example, short-term, kind of catastrophic type insurance policies. But for some people, that's the thing that they need for the moment. So I want to increase choice in healthcare. I also believe that there must be accountability for sanctuary cities and sanctuary states. The Supreme Court made it clear when the conservative, let's say, red state sued Biden. The Supreme Court ruled basically that there's nothing you can do as a state about enforcing who comes into the country or not. It is soundly within the federal government's realm. So how can a state turn around and thwart federal government implementation of federal law? Even if you decide that your local or state law enforcement can't actively participate, how do you go about thwarting it? It seems to me that there's a conflict there that we have to address. I want to also address from an immigration perspective. I think that the Senate and the House right now needs to be holding investigations and conversation about what due process looks like for the 20 plus million people who were let into the country illegally. Because right now, those folks, their due dates to have a hearing is 7+ years out of the down the road. Birthright citizenship from the Reconstruction era, fleshing that out. The founders or framers made it very clear that the children of foreigners and aliens, their language, not mine, are not citizens. They explicitly said in the debate, Jacobs, the one who sponsored the amendment, said that it does not include, obviously, he said, of course, it does not include foreigners and children of aliens. So that needs to be fleshed out. On another note, I think one of the things I want to do is slow down the pace of government. There's a lot of action that happens that's inefficient, ineffective. So the DOGE stuff means a lot to me, and it needs to be done in a way that makes sense, that doesn't unemploy Americans and or cause real significant upheavals to our economy. But I also think with this Americans First agenda, we're reframing everything here. We're rethinking NAFTA. The president that I voted for, Bill Clinton, right, put a lot of that stuff into place. So we're going to have some bumps, and I think we can do a better job communicating that to the people. So I want to make sure that as a senator, my door is open. I'm regularly communicating fireside chats, right? Need to come back with the folks of Illinois and the country about what's happening and the potential impacts of that so they can be prepared. Absolutely. And, on top of that, too, what is your effort going to be? And want to dive back in, but on top of economic growth and on top of keeping, families safe and all that goes into it, how difficult or how much work will you put in to addressing maybe the lack of what the public sees as federal funding to downstate Illinois? Yeah. Or if it is funding, it goes to maybe certain counties, and that's kind of just it. Are you going to make it more apparent to try to push for more federal funded, programs, more federally funded opportunities like bridges and construction projects or anything like that for more of the southern areas of Illinois and throughout the state? Yeah, no. Wonderful question. Illinois is such a richly resourced state when it comes to infrastructure. You can get to many places, right? Either mid-state where we are and certainly through Chicago, right? And so I definitely want to make sure that there's equity in access to capital. And one of the things that I found when I reached out to mayors when I first started this campaign to find out what their pain points were, some of them don't know how to access the capital. Yeah. Right. So part of it's going to be me collaborating with House and then local Senate and House folks at the state level to make sure that they have a solid relationship with their districts and their district leaders are really well aware in their communities, their municipalities are well aware of how to actually get the money in the first place. Well, I think it's really important to have an all hands on deck approach from all levels of government and your representation to all work together to have that better opportunity. Totally agree. And that's how I believe leadership should be. So. Absolutely. You got a moment to take a break with me? Absolutely. Let me pay a quick bill. It's 10:45 on this Wednesday morning. The third day of December continues right after this on Apple Podcasts, Roku TV, RiverBender.
Throughout all life stages, you need someone in your corner, guiding you on your health and wellness journey. At OSF Healthcare, that's your primary care provider. Your OSF primary care provider is there for every stage of life. Find a provider today at osfhealthcare.org/primary.
Not sure if you've noticed, but those advertised prices from the other dealers are just a bunch of blah, blah, blah. At Roberts Motors, the advertised price is the price you pay. And that, my friend, is great news for you. Don't fall for their so-called incentives that will leave you banging your head against the wall. Go with Roberts Motors. Prices you can trust and people you will like. That's the Roberts Motors way. And trust me, it's the way to go.
Has free checking become a thing of the past? Not if Liberty has anything to say about it. With 3 free personal checking options and even a free business checking account, free is alive and well at Liberty Bank, the local bank that gives you free checking choices and more cashing in your pocket. Bank locally, bank Liberty. For more information, visit www.bankliberty.com.
Tomorrow isn't built by dreamers. It's built by doers. Because progress doesn't work unless we do. So at Ameren, we've been hard at work putting energy to work for you. Adding underground cables, installing advanced switches and sensors, storm hardening poles and power lines, making the energy grid stronger today so it can meet your needs tomorrow. Learn about projects in your area at Ameren.com/energyfuture.
You're listening to Our Daily Show with CJ Nasello on RiverBender.com.
Oh, the weather outside is frightful, but the fire is so delightful. And since we've no place to go, let it snow, let it snow, let it snow. Man, it doesn't show signs of stopping, and I brought me some.
The time is 10:47. Hopefully no more snow this weekend for our area. There could be a dusting up to a trace of snow this afternoon. So just be careful as you're driving home and stay up to date on RiverBender.com/weather. Back with Dr. Denise Long as she is running for Senate on the Republican side of things. The primary is coming up.
St. Patrick's Day.
It is St.
Yeah.
There you go.
So hopefully you can take your I voted sticker and get 75% off of good St. Patrick's Day vibes.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You know, as we dive into this and really the nuts and bolts of it, you know, I'm sure for a lot of individuals that are, you know, listening to your campaign and love the ideas, they're excited. But what's it take to win? Because there's a two-pronged approach to this. You have to get through the primary in March, and then also on the flip side, you're marching right up to November, and that's when the war machine, so to speak, comes out.
Yeah, absolutely. I am keenly aware that this is a deeply blue state.
Yeah.
I think most pollsters right now are calling it blue for the governor's race, the U.S. Senate race, which is what I am in, as well as potentially the House. What it takes to win is really making sure that the candidate who comes out of the Republican primary is one who can win the general. And in order to win the general, you are going to have to be able to appeal to a broader swath of constituents. You're going to have to be able to appeal to Democrats who are disaffected, independents, even some Republicans who I've met who are disenchanted, shall we say, about the things that have happened. And then there is a large percentage of voters who are not registered, as well as who don't vote because they don't feel their voice matters. So I'm looking to animate people. I'm looking to engage people across that broad base of constituent groups. And based upon the response that I've had, I am optimistic about my chances for St. Patrick's Day.
Now, going forward too, after St. Patrick's Day, is there a nervousness to Donald Trump not being on the midterm the ballot this time around? I know that's been a national conversation as pundits try to decide what the midterms look like. No one's going to know until the day after anyway. But, you know, does that bother you at all?
You know, it doesn't necessarily, because Donald Trump is in his last, legal administration. We have to really think about what the party looks like. Who's going to step into those big shoes, right? And I also think that there are folks who are looking to move forward with the party, but keep the Americans first ethos that Donald Trump sort of called us to really think about.
Absolutely. And you know, as folks gear up towards March and want to learn more, what's the best way to get connected with you? Are you open to speaking opportunities and those type of engagements?
Oh, I love a good conversation and I love a good listening session. Folks can visit my campaign website, which is www.longforsenate2026.com. That's LONGFOR Senate. I'm also on all the socials. You can find me on Twitter X with my campaign, Long for Senate. I'm Long for Illinois on Twitter. And then you can also just Google me, Pamela Denise Long, and find me on Instagram, TikTok, and the like.
Absolutely. Before I let you go, we started off with touching on economic growth and the immigration. I want to finish on economic growth real quick. You know, take me through your sourcing plan and just, you know, really break it down for the folks like me that go, that sounds great, but what's it really mean?
Yeah, well, first of all, we have to realize that we can legally focus on making sure that Americans are benefiting from the jobs. American-born citizens are benefiting from the jobs. Just saw some data that, once again, 2 out of 3 new jobs created went to folks who were not born in the United States. So legally, we can do it. I was invited to D.C. to brief congressional staffers about my concept of this. And what it looks like is making sure there is training, making sure there's upskilling, making sure we're revisiting education. You know, my home state of Mississippi, where I was born, flipped their underperformance, and now they're top, right? They were at the bottom, now they're on the top. We need to get back to some basics, reading, writing, arithmetic, and shall we say respect as well. Yeah. And we also need to make sure that parents are reading to their children at home, literacy and numeracy.
Can I ask you one more question? Sure. And I wasn't going to ask you, I was going to wait to the next time, but this really is, you know, important, I think, for this area and really in this part of the Metro East is housing. You know, right now, and it could be, for me, I'm going to speak to the younger generation. You know, we see a lot of the Section 8 and the subsidized housing. Now we're creating new words for it so we all feel better about the term. But it's never going to be our home. It's always going to be in this processed, the way it's set up now for so many families that you're always going to rent, and that's it. There's no American dream. It's no property. It's no house. Is there any way with infill programs that we could set aside or look into paths to inspire that next generation, that young American that just graduated college or they're looking for their first home, and not necessarily with $10,000 at closing, but maybe it's repairing, you know, helping with the repairs of an older house to restore a neighborhood.
Absolutely.
Is there anything, you know, in your mind when it comes to that and pursuing that for younger people or older people that just work their butts off and they can't afford a $10,000 HVAC bill?
Absolutely. This all goes back to Americans first. We need a tight labor market to make sure businesses are rewarding Americans with higher pay. We need to really revisit how we've saddled so many students, including folks my age, Gen Xers, with debt because we sold education as a way out. And now everyone wants a master's degree for a job that really shouldn't require it. In terms of housing, there's a link on my website called Dignified Living Conditions, which talks about that. I absolutely agree with you that one of my pushes is to make sure that we revitalize the existing infrastructure. There's no reason that I look around places like St. Louis or East St. Louis and there are these dilapidated buildings, beautiful infrastructure, just really going to waste. We have schools that are underpopulated. Why can't we convert those into different types of living situation, condos and the like? The 50-year mortgage, I'm not a fan of because I don't want people strapped into debt until they're 85 and have to work. But I think we definitely need to look at revitalization and increasing pay.
Really interesting. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, CJ. I've appreciated it.
Dr. Pamela Denise Long will be the name that appears on the primary ballot in March. You're more than welcome to come back throughout the journey. And really just best of luck to you.
Thank you.
We'll take a quick break. We'll wrap up the Wednesday morning that was after this.